Tonight, a Monday night news dump with giant national consequences. So while you and much of the rest of America were watching that solar eclipse today, or maybe you were watching college basketball earlier, Trump now says that the states, not the federal government, should be the one to decide when it's okay for a woman to terminate a pregnancy.
Many states will be different. Many will have a different number of weeks, or some will have more conservative than others, and that's what they will be. At the end of the day, this is all about the will of the people.
Trump and his campaign might hope that Christian conservatives don't notice or don't see all the headlines. But rest assured, we noticed, and so did many of the people on the right, and they are not so happy. Anti-abortion conservatives like Mike Pence, his former vice president, who calls the decision a retreat, that it's a slap in the face to the millions of pro-life Americans who voted for him in 2016 and 2020. Now, Trump's final, for now, answer ends this month-long seesaw between trying to cater to the voters who want a national ban, telling them he's proud he brought Roe crashing all the way down, and telling the majority of Americans who are not interested in the federal government getting deeply involved in reproductive rights that he'll stay out of the way.
But that's why it's the question about a federal abortion ban. You did not say yes or no to that. You did not say how many weeks.
It depends what the deal is.
I want to know what you want. I want to know what you're going to do if you're
reelected. We are going to come together.
Would you sign federal legislation that would ban abortion at 15 weeks?
No. I mean, DeSantis is willing to sign a 5-week and 6-week ban.
Would you support that? You think that goes too far?
I think what he did is a terrible thing and a terrible mistake. Now, I happen to be for the exceptions, like Ronald Reagan, with the life of the mother, rape, incest, if you talk 5 or 6 weeks.
Joining me now is the president of Students for Life of America, Kristan Hawkins. Kristan, thanks for staying up for us tonight. I wonder, do you agree with former Vice President Mike Pence that Donald Trump just delivered a slap in the face to the pro-life movement?
Look, I don't believe this particular statement is the cause of the division between Mike Pence and Donald Trump. But I think we're very clear in the pro-life movement, and we've always been, that ending abortion is a federal issue, that your human rights, your right to exist, to not be killed, should not end or start depending on a state line. But I actually was pleasantly surprised by the president's statement today. I was glad to see that he didn't fall in the trap that Democrats wanted him to fall into, of taking a stand on a divisive late-term abortion law, which would only prevent 4 to 6% of abortions in America, yet would have been a fundraising cash cow for Joe Biden and Democrats.
Are you talking about a ban that is around? Are you talking about a ban on abortion that would be around 15 or 16 weeks? Is that what you're referring to there?
Sure. In February, the New York Times rumored that President Trump was flirting with the idea of coming out for a 15 or 16-week abortion prevention act. As soon as that happened, my inbox and my text messages was flooded by fundraising appeals from Democrats saying that Trump pledged to ban abortion, which they left out the part that a 15, 16-week prevention act would only stop about 4 to 6% of abortions in our country. But he didn't give them that opportunity today. He said, let's have the states have a say, which the Dobbs decision did say that it is now up to the states, but it also did not eliminate the federal government. We would say in the pro-life movement, there's a role for both.
I think your interpretation of it is interesting, because Trump actually said he thinks this should be left to the states. He did not endorse a federal ban. So are you suggesting that this is not actually going to be a long-term position for him?
Well, I think it's very clear. Like, I can count, and most Americans can count, and we know that there's not 60 pro-life votes in the U.S. Senate to pass any pro-life legislation that would prevent abortions, because Democrats have been very clear. They can't name one abortion they disagree with. And so getting any prevention act passed the Senate is going to be a monumental task. I think right now, when we're looking at momentum and progress to protect women and children from the predatory abortion industry, we're looking at the state. But that's not to say there's not a federal role. I mean, you can look at what Joe Biden has done, tragically yet brilliantly, and forcing the federal government to get involved here with abortion. Anyone who says it's a state issue should agree with me that we should defund a Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry right away. I should just note
that what you're talking about, the lack of 60 votes for a federal abortion ban, is also because the majority of Americans don't support it. But I wonder, do you at least support Donald Trump allowing exceptions? Kristan, do you at least support what Donald Trump says, which is that there should be exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother?
The pro-life movement's been very clear, and every pro-life law that is passed, that is enacted today in America, sadly too few Americans know this, there is an explicit exception for protecting the life of a mother when her life is at risk during pregnancy. And that we talk often about that in the pro-life movement. When there is a tragic case, when fetal-maternal separation is needed. We don't even consider that to be an abortion because the intention is to save life, not to be directly ending human life. We've also been very clear in the pro-life movement that the circumstances of your conception do not define your worth and should not dictate whether or not you get to live or die. And so that's been our position in the pro-life movement. That's been our position for the 50-some years that we saw Roe versus Wade. But like I said, so I'm not exactly in agreement with everything Donald Trump says on many issues, but I would say today his position that he outlined, I think was a smart position of saying that states still should be involved and they should be very much involved protecting women, children from the abortion industry and not undercutting so many of our state legislators who've acted with courage since the Dobbs decision to pass life at conception laws, heartbeat abortion prevention laws, chemical abortion bans. But that's not to say there's not going to be a role for him and what the pro-life movement is going to be requiring the president to do while we wait for those 60 votes. He needs to get to start day one, stopping the proliferation of chemical abortion pills, which now has chemically tainted human remains entering our waterways with known endocrine disruptors.
Just a couple quick things here. One, I just want to clarify. You said that when a woman's life is at risk and abortion is required, that's not an abortion. It is actually an abortion. The other thing is you noted that you want
fetal separation.
You noted that you want to see things from Donald Trump. The pro-life movement are going to demand things of Donald Trump. You talked about banning medication abortions. What about his running mate? Is it going to be a requirement that Donald Trump's running mate be someone who is sufficiently anti-abortion for the pro-life movement?
We've been very clear in my op-ed with Town Hall that was out yesterday, actually. I gave a full list of the requirements and our demands to President Trump. And what the first on the list was a pro-life running mate, a pro-life vice president, pro-life cabinet secretaries. I mean, there's so much to do when you think about how the Biden administration, there are 80-year-old grandmas in jail today, thanks to the Biden administration, who prayed in front of a Planned Parenthood and are facing an 11-year federal prison sentence, while squatters are entering homes in New York and their owners are being arrested. So there is a lot.
One final thing, Kristan, you heard, or Donald Trump said today that he supports IVF. You have a different position. You say the industry needs more regulation and more change. Is that,
Absolutely.
I mean, that kind of sounds like code for more restrictions that could make IVF something that is out of reach for a lot of families. I mean, do you disagree with Trump that this should be something that is clearly legal for families who want to have children?
Well, I think this is a time for a conversation. I think when the Alabama Supreme Court ruling came out, acknowledging the pain of the families who lost children because of the reckless nature of the IVF clinic, I think that was the start of a conversation. I don't know how much President Trump knows about in vitro fertilization or the wild, wild west that happens. The fact that you can go into an IVF clinic today, create human beings, and tell the IVF clinic to discard those human beings if they're the wrong sex or if they have the wrong wrong genetic makeup. That's eugenics. Children like mine who have cystic fibrosis are routinely thrown away in IVF clinics or discarded for life-ending research. So I would say there's a conversation, but what we do know at our own polling in our Institute for Pro-Life Advancement, Students for Life, that I put into the field immediately after the Alabama Supreme Court ruling, was that the vast majority of Americans say they support IVF, but then when you educate them just in 30 seconds about what happens inside of an IVF clinic, we see dramatic mind-changing results. So I would like to have a personal conversation with him about IVF because I think ultimately when we talk in the pro-life movement, we want more babies and we want more families, but we need to do that in an ethical way that treats all human beings with dignity and value. And as Pope Francis said today, indefinite dignity.
Well, it's clear that that is actually a position that even many Republicans disagree with. It's also a position that the Alabama legislature disagreed with when they moved shortly after that Alabama Supreme Court decision to protect IVF and the ability of families to have access to it in that state. I understand that, Kristan.
We condemned the Alabama legislature for making that decision because that was a complete overreaction.
Thank you very much for joining us on all of that tonight. Kristan Hawkins.